Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Sutala,
And I'm Casey McBride.
here with special guest Paul DeFranco. And despite some technology issues, here is Stir Crazy Shamans. Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Sutala, and thank you so much for joining this episode of Stir Crazy Shamans. Just doing a quick tech thing, but today we have special guest Paul DeFranco with us, who is a past hypnotherapist, past life regression specialist, and also has some information about the Akashic Records. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you both. I've been catching your program on and off for the last month.
Awesome. I remember one time you even sent me a message that you were it says going live in 2.54. I got to do something here. Sorry, guys. A little tech thing going on. So let me just go in here and do this real quick. I see us live on Facebook, but I don't see it.
Oh, and I have to make us public on mine. Oh, here we go. Sorry, everyone, stand by for technical stuff.
Casey, you've just gone a little bit dark. I could see you, but not as well as before.
Okay. Oh, and I'm not even on the right. Where am I?
Oh, it does show me I'm live. I think there was just, maybe there's just, I don't know. On Facebook, I'm looking at it and it's not live, but I'm looking at the studio and it says it is live. I don't know.
Well, that's fun.
This is just an odd day. So everybody, let's do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 for technology. And that will be a whole separate video explaining what I just did.
I'd like to do the squirrel thing. They shake it off.
Well, anyway, I guess we can kind of start now. So, anyway, starting again. Paul DeFranco is with us. Paul, welcome.
I've got a question for you two shamans. Can I go off topic?
Oh, absolutely. We love that. That's why, with the name Stir Crazy in the title, people can't expect us to stay on topic.
Oh, I like that. It's built in. The reason I thought of this is because you kind of alluded to something about my being on the walk when I gave you a test, not a test message, but a hello, I'm listening.
Yeah.
And in lieu of going to the gym, 3 or 4 times a week over the last month and a half, to stay active, I've been doing walks in the metro parks. And that's the last time I caught you, actually. And one. And it was maybe around 7 p.m., if that has anything to do with what I saw. And I was on a trail that I'm always on. And I went by a tree and I heard, a number of trees, there were a lot of trees there, a moaning and a groaning. And I thought, sounds like a wounded animal. So I got really still and just sat and watched, and it seemed to be coming from a tree. This tree was groaning and moaning. It sounded like an animal. I don't know. Have you ever run into that before? And what does it mean?
No, well, one, it could be, it's mating season for a lot of animals, so they could be getting it on up in the tree. That's why the first thing that comes to me, honestly.
It was a deep sound.
Oh, well. Oh, Casey, that might be more in your topic because you have more awareness around spirit beings and things like that than I, in terms of their functionings and things.
No, I don't know about. I do remember I was hiking through the metro parks. I think this was yesterday or the day before, and same thing. I came across. It was like 3 or 4 trees that had kind of grown together, and just the way the wind was blowing them, it was like a really loud and. Sound that like you wouldn't expect if you didn't see the trees moving. I would not have expected that to be coming from a tree. But as far as like spiritual beings, I don't know. I'm more of I see. I don't really hear audibly as much, but I do sometimes. So who knows? That could have been. There could have been just some kind of spirit being making some kind of noise right by the tree, or who knows.
Well, I sat and watched it for about a minute or so, and then I thought, what if this means it's going to fall? Maybe because, everything's kind of stripped of leaves still. And I looked up, I didn't see a leaf on the tree. So I backed away out of the, possible path and listened to it for a while longer. And then I thought, well, I'll just have to ask somebody. The last time I was on with you, Hank, I think I told you a story about my friend who journeyed to a tree.
I vaguely remember. You'll have to refresh my memory. Plus, everybody else hasn't heard it.
Okay. So this was a gigantic tree on a city lot in Ellet, which is a suburb, well, not a suburb, but an area in Akron. And it was dropping large branches on her car and garage and house and that kind of thing in the backyard. And so she felt bad about cutting it down, but it needed to come down. So prior to having it cut down, she journeyed to it and talked to it and said, it looks like this is causing a lot of havoc for me in my life and expense. I'm going to need to take you down. And the tree gave her permission. It said, the spirit of the tree said, it's time for me to go and return to the earth. And I've had a good long life, etc. This is like 25 years ago. So I'm paraphrasing it, but it left such a mark in my memory that it came up last week and then again last night when I heard this tree groaning in my
Well, one thing around that, there's a shamanic classes going on. I don't know if it happened in the apprenticeship group or in the soul retrieval intensive that we're doing, but one of the students had asked, they have this tree and they felt really bad, like the tree was now kind of getting to be a danger on the property and she was going to need to cut it down, and she was just heartsick at needing to do this. And what came from the discussion was that, well, just because you have to cut down the tree, one, you can communicate with the tree and let it know this is what's up, but then you can still honor the tree in a lot of different ways. So we were all giving her suggestions that you could take the wood and donate it for use in a sweat lodge. You can take some of the sticks and make it into runes or to shamanic staffs or other things. And so there's amazing ways to honor, like when you do have to make that choice to cut down a tree, letting it know, having that conversation with it, but then also honoring it and continuing to let it be a service in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's reincarnation for trees. You become cool spiritual knickknacks.
And then hopefully there's one of those giant forest walker things that will come along and guide your soul into the afterlife, like we came across.
Yeah. We went on a hike the other day, and Casey has, like, we work very differently. Like, he actually sees the spirit beings, and I just have an awareness of what things are. So it's kind of cool that we're starting to blend together a bit now. So he's like describing this thing to me, and like never really knew what it was. I'm like, oh, this is like the spirit that goes when a tree dies and like guides that tree spirit's essence into another plane and another dimension. And it was just kind of just totally fit with the way that he energetically described it. So it's trees are magical. Everything has this animated life essence to it, and if you have to make a choice about anything, you can have a conversation with it, whether it's a table, a rock, a chair, a tree, and just having that dialogue and it energetically knowing that it's going to be repurposed or something else is going to come of it, makes a lot more ease with the energy. And then you can maybe get some inspirations of how to create new possibilities, like making rune stones or something like that. So that's a great story that she had that conversation and journey to the tree.
And with this tree, I was wondering, was it in pain or were they growing pains? Was it ready to kind of burst forward for spring or what the heck was going on? But I had never heard a tree. I would actually describe it more as singing rather than moaning and groaning.
Okay. Almost
like a whale sings. It was a very low, sustained sound, like
Well, if you had described it that way the first time, I might have got a different place with where I was thinking.
Okay, think of a whale, maybe a whale or an elephant. It was a very low. I can't even go that low. Yeah, but.
Well, where's this park? Maybe we need to make a little shaman adventure out to this park, Casey.
Yeah.
And look for the singing tree.
Oh, now we have to, because we have to find out
How
what's going
far
on.
away are you from Parma? It's in West Creek,
Okay.
West Creek Reservation.
Well, send me a note after we're done, and we will go out there. Maybe we'll make a little video and we'll post it on the channel. Like, we found the singing tree, and maybe we'll see what we can get on camera and stuff like that. Now this is a mission. See, this is why this happened, Paul, is because now you've given us a mission to go out to find the singing tree.
Here's the other thing that's odd about my last 3 trips out to this park. The last 3 times I saw a deer. The second trip of the 3, there was a herd of deer. There must have been a half a dozen or more right in front of me. I've been going to this park now for a month and a half, 2 months, however it's been, since the shutdown. And I don't remember seeing any, but this is 3 days in a row. So I had a singing tree and deer around me.
Yeah, last time we were hiking, I didn't see any physical deer, but I saw the spirit of a buck. It was like really just powerful energy. But yeah, I know sometimes I'll hike, for a whole month, going regularly to the metro parks, and I won't see a single deer. And then, you just start to see and I wonder if is it their mating season around now? I wonder if that has to do anything with it.
That could be dangerous. Well, deers I think that's symbolic of the heart.
Very cool.
So putting those 2 concepts together, your heart sing. Walks are making my heart sing.
There you go. So now, kind of looping back, now we had a great little excursion. I know that people are probably like, what does this have to do with Akashic Records? But maybe.
But you got to give me credit. I tied into your whole shamanic thing pretty well.
No, that
was awesome.
That was wonderful. And I really like where the conversation went with that, and kind of gave us a little field trip assignment now.
And it wasn't planned. I wasn't planning on asking you that question. I just came up.
Right. So now, if you're just joining us, one quick note: we are streaming to YouTube and then a whole bunch of places on Facebook. So if you're catching this on Facebook, unless it's like my personal profile, which I forgot to set to public, or if it's Casey's profile, we're not seeing the comments. So you need to go to YouTube to make the comments, or you can message the show at the Facebook thing. So definitely take a moment to do that. And while you're on YouTube, if it feels light, please click the subscribe button and click the thumbs up, because that just helps us reach more YouTubers when they see that people are finding value out of the video and stuff. It gets served up to more people, so that definitely helps us out. But today's talk is all about the Akashic Records, and I didn't even know Paul knew anything about the Akashic Records until I was talking with them on another podcast I do called Holistic Highlights, and we were talking about meditation. And then I found out he was doing a class at Goddess Elite where he was taking people through a process to journey to the Akashic Records. So Paul, first, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself too? I put on the description, the original one that didn't get deleted, that you're an internationally known hypnotherapist and past life regression. he's laughing, but the thing is, he's taught at Lilydale. And for people who don't know what Lilydale is a spiritualist community in New York that people travel to from all around the world. So once you've taught at Lilydale, guaranteed you're known in at least a couple countries. So I'm fully confident that it's true. But tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today as a practitioner with the hypnotherapy arts and meditation and everything you do.
Wow. I don't know if we have enough time for that. It's going to be really abbreviated. It was a series of stepping stones, and I don't know where to start, so I'm not going to go to the beginning. But as I look back, and maybe you two can do this too, it was just one thing led to another, and led to another, led to another. And it wasn't planned. I mean, maybe I could see one step out, 2 steps out, but if I were to go 30 years ago and project, I couldn't have projected where I ended up. Just no way. But with hypnotherapy, it's kind of like my latest addition, and I really blend. I'm not trying to tie in at all, but I do shamanic work through the hypnotherapy. Like with bringing back soul.
See, I'm learning new things about Paul all the time that I didn't know that you did a shamanic component to your work.
Yeah. So one of my main teachers, and then her teacher, who was actually part Native American, as I recall, started blending in some of the shamanic work with the hypnotherapy, and then I learned from those two. So we can also do some soul retrieval work and some extraction work through through the hypnotherapy as well. It's not quite the same. The people are more or less doing it themselves, and you're guiding them through it rather than doing it for them. Um, but anyways, I went on another excursion.
Excursions are a-okay, Paul. No worries.
I think I have this unconscious wish to tie in with your show somehow because they're totally unplanned and happened twice.
Well, let me throw a question to Casey because maybe we can tie the topic we were going to talk about into Akashic Records. Have you, in your shamanic journeys, have you ever? Because and I can answer this too from my training. But have you gone to the Akashic Records? Have you used that in your shamanic work at all?
I'll be totally honest. I know conceptually like what the Akashic Records I think kind of means, but maybe I don't know. Maybe I have. I don't know exactly what that would be like to do that, but maybe I have many times. I'm not sure.
Well, maybe after today's talk, you'll find out more and be able to take a chance at it sometime.
Well, and I guess a question to ask then, since Casey's not even familiar with it, Paul, why don't you give us in layman's terms what is the Akashic Records and why should we care about it?
So the Akashic Records are probably one of the most abstract philosophical, metaphysical things that I do, and I don't know that I have a really good explanation for it. I don't know that anybody does. One of the best analogies that I heard recently is it's like the spiritual internet. Because you can ask yourself, well, where is the internet? Is it on your computer? Well, yeah, but not really. You know, it's everywhere. And the Akashic Records, I think, from what I can wrap my head around it, are everywhere. It's like the substance of the universe. Okay, having said that, that's like the really big abstract picture. I think the image that most people have, because they have to start somewhere with some kind of a model, some kind of a model to journey to in your language, is a hall of records, an ancient library where the information of your life is stored that you can retrieve. So there's a little bit of a dividing line. Some people think that all of our lives information is there from beginning to end, and others will say it's up to the present day, and then there's a set of probabilities that can occur based on where you're at right now. And I think that's the way a medium might look at the work that they do. Is that the way you see it? You've been through medium training.
Yeah, definitely. Because people always like, well, is this going to happen? And I can actually look at it. I see it as a gauge, and it goes from 0 to 100. And 0 is like a hard no, and 100 is a hard yes. And usually it's a needle that falls somewhere in between because it's all probabilities. And I can see sometimes if I tell someone they're about to get a new job, I see the need. I say, okay, if I tell this to the person, it just drops like significantly because I can already know that if they know that the job's coming, they're going to stop doing what they're doing, and they just change the probabilities. So that's why I use this needle technique, because it's like, well, with questions like that, it's always about, well, what are you choosing? Because you can bring anything you like into your life, and your choices and awareness around your choices just increases or decreases your probabilities and how quickly you can actualize it in your life. But you can absolutely create anything. There's nothing off the table.
So hanging around mediums and having visited Lilydale for almost 3 decades now, I'm in that latter group that I think it's a place to go to find out about your life and really all lives, but up to where they're at today. And then I'm of that school that the rest can be probabilities that you may or may not want to know about. So you could do past life work by going to the shamanic records and obtaining that information there. It's another way of approaching past life.
I love it. Did you realize you just called it the shamanic records instead of Akashic Records?
I didn't even catch that.
Or maybe it's just the way I heard it. Oh, it's official. It's re-termed now.
Shamanic Records.
We're coining it.
I like to examine things, and I'm very, very self-reflective. And then there was an insecure part of me, I got to admit, that said, what am I doing on the show? I'm not a shaman. And how am I going to fit in? Is it stretching me, or is it stretching the show? And I maybe unconsciously, and the unconscious is so powerful in the hypnotherapy world anyway, that I keep trying to find ties to work in your show. So you're gonna stop there.
Don't tell me it was just a Freudian slip. I'll be so disappointed.
That's what, the theory behind Freudian slips, it's your unconscious talking to you. There's a reason why Freud started listening to Freudian slips, because he found meaning in them and then performed the analysis around it. Okay, well, how does this relate to what this person is experiencing in their life today? So Freudian slips are not to be thrown away.
Well, and to kind of play on that, if in fact that was a Freudian slip kind of speaking an unspoken truth, the original spirituality in the world was shamanism. It is what goes back to the roots of so many different cultures. And from that, as the modern world evolved, they put different labels on things and called different things something else and all that. So perhaps originally this was just, how shamans knew things. They went to where things were, and it was the records for everything. Who knows? So I like it.
So I think a lot of times when I'm doing like readings for people, so for example, a lot of times people will want to know, okay, how do I know this being that has showed up? And that being will start to, I just get this like energy that they send, and then I start to see like a whole past life scene playing out, and then I get knowledge along with that I can translate into words. So I wonder if that's not them like, okay, here's that part of the Akashic Records, and now we're both linked to it and seeing the same thing. I wonder if that's not sort of a similar experience.
Mm-hmm. I think it is. I think what Hank was talking about earlier, I see a lot of parallels, and this is part of my training. And because I've tried a lot of different modalities out there, just this much. In hypnotherapy, I've gone a little deeper. A lot of them I just kind of sampled. But even in the small depths I've gone into these, if you line them up, they're so similar, and it's just a matter of what you call them and maybe how you perceive them and what kind of models you on them in your mind.
Absolutely.
No, I just wanted to share real quick. I think it's funny you said hypnotherapy is one of the things you got into a little later. For me, hypnotherapy was one of the first things I discovered that then led me into discovering all this other stuff. But Hank, I don't know if you knew that, but I was really into hypnosis way back in the day.
I know you mentioned it once, but were you just participating in things, or did you actually go through training, and do you do hypnotherapy? I wasn't sure on that.
So I never went to school. I almost did. I called and was ready to sign up, but they were like, oh, you just missed enrollment. You'll have to wait till next year. And so I never ended up doing it, but I practiced. It wasn't hypnotherapy because I wasn't certified, but I was the one facilitating hypnosis. I was the hypnotist.
Guided meditation.
Right. And I did that for like hundreds of people. And a lot of the times I would just play with more of the fun, like hypnotic phenomena, like hypnotic amnesia, positive and negative hallucinations, and like all that fun stuff.
Wow. Those are some pretty deep techniques that you're talking about there. Wow.
Yeah. Oh,
you're a natural.
I found some really good teachers that had a lot of great like free resources, but I was able to I would watch a video on a technique, and then I would go and try it on someone, and like that, it was just like I picked it up. So it came very naturally to me. So a lot of like what I do with certain guided shamanic meditations and things to get the person into the trance state where we start to journey. I will use techniques that I learned way back then from hypnosis to do that.
So you're tying him in as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the hypnotherapy is the primary way that you help people access the Akashic Records, isn't it, Paul?
Right, right. But before we go there, I know we're channelizing people with the Akashic Records a lot. What these two fields have in common is the trance state. They're both just different types of trance states that we operate in. So now to your question, which was something about the Akashic Records.
Oh, well, that was one of the, like, when you facilitate people accessing the Akashic Records, the main tool that you use is to bring them through some sort of hypnotherapy.
Right. And it's a deeper form too. For most people to have that access, you need to take them down pretty low. So there's a long induction on it. This is not something that I have yet tried in like a quick 30-minute group kind of, sampling thing. I'm not sure it would work that way.
At least maybe not consistently with everybody in the group, because they're all in different spots that have to go to a different depth or whatnot.
So Edgar Casey, who was also a natural in the maybe 1930s and 40s, used to put himself down through self-hypnosis fairly quickly and access the Akashic Records. But he was, probably one in a million that had that kind of talent and also practice. But normally it takes a while to get there. Does that help?
No, absolutely. And what helps people, like if you did want to access the Akashic Records, one thing that you can start doing, and I know Casey did a lot of meditations and things, is you just start practicing, because it's all about, and maybe they even have, I don't know if they've discovered the exact frequency the brain goes to when you're accessing that, but there's all these different levels of theta and different brainwave frequencies. And I've always looked at that as each brainwave frequency, even like if it's like 7.1 hertz, 7.115 hertz, all these little subtle variations, it's like a radio and you're turning into a certain station. And so like you're trying to, what you're doing when you're doing the hypnotherapy work is you're bringing them to a point where they're in that frequency and they can actually access that channel, if you will. And people who have a practice of meditation or mindfulness and movement or anything else that can start to entrain the brain to go there more easily, it can really help out when you're looking to do that work. I know when we had Paul for the first past life regression hypnotherapy thing, he had told me, I went out like he was just starting to bring people down and I was already like off having things. And then he shared with me that meditators, because your brain naturally has been going to these theta states and things like that, they tend to go down way more quickly. And that's been was my experience with Paul as well. Plus you got the most hypnotic voice ever.
Well, thank you. So yeah, you brought up a number of good points. We speak about people being in beta or alpha and theta and delta, and it really is a range. And I would guess that you're going to be more in the lower end of theta to get to the Akashic Records, and that's why usually it's a longer induction to get there for most people. You have to talk about most and tendencies, and because everybody has different talents out there.
And I know you did a thing with Goddess Elite not too long ago with kind of an Akashic. What was that different? Was that Akashic Records, or was that? Now I'm forgetting if it was that or something else.
I did 3 things with them. The last was the Akashic.
Right.
Did a past life.
So I'm curious, when you go through and you bring people down for Akashic Records, sometimes does someone just have a completely different experience? And I assume that's okay. Like people have whatever experience that they're going to have. But oftentimes when you're doing the work in hypnotherapy, you might be giving them a guiding to go on one, but once they're in the space, they might go off and have whatever's right for them at the same time.
Well, the way it was explained to me by one of my teachers was the higher self wants us to heal. And when it sees an opportunity, meaning a window or door open, it just may jump through it. So when you open somebody up, you're creating that opportunity, you're opening the window, and the higher self may guide the unconscious and the subconscious minds to go somewhere that wasn't planned, because it it determines the priority, not our conscious minds here and our ego here. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. And it really makes sense a lot, because if you're always on the defensive and now you're just starting to open up your higher self, you might just choose to do whatever's going to create the greatest change for you instead of what was planned. But sometimes the ego might get in the way, because it's like, but he says to go down the path, but I want to go through that door. I got to go down the path, but I want to go through that door. So it's probably really important to let people know at the beginning, like, hey, if you are having a different awareness, that, follow your knowing.
So two things come to mind. I've had a gazillion soul retrievals on me in the last 25, 30 years. And sometimes I'll ask the practitioners if they can bring back a part, or ask to bring back a part regarding a certain period in my life or situation. And I'll always get the answer, well, I'll ask, I'll try, but there's no guarantee, because there and you are not in charge of this. It's the order that they need to come in, that they'll come in. So that's point number one. Point number two was the first time I had a hypnotherapy, deep hypnotherapy session, and I'd been getting the light stuff for maybe 15, 20 years up until that point. I went to this person with a particular problem, and I can't even remember what it was, but I said, here's what I want solved. And that's the way hypnotherapy works best. You give somebody, the hypnotherapist, some instructions, and they pull out a technique to help solve that problem for you. So what happened was I tripped into a past life. I didn't go there wanting a past life regression. I wanted a certain problem solved. The past life regression relieved me and revealed a tendency to bring unnecessary guilt along with me. That's not what I went there for. But somehow my higher self guided her and I into relieving me of this guilt that I brought in with me from another life that used to occur when there was no reason for guilt to occur. So it was a load. Think of maybe Quasimodo with the hump. It was a load I was carrying around me for years for no reason. And so I bring that up because it ties in with what you said. I went there for one purpose, but what came out was a completely different solution to an answer that I wasn't even seeking. I didn't know I had the problem.
And I have the same insight. Casey probably has the same insight. Go for it. You can go. I won't.
It might not be, but anyway, I was just going to say that when all these readings I've been doing lately, people will come asking questions of oh, well, I want to know what's going on with like this relationship or whatever. And we start out asking those questions, and then Spirit sometimes it's like, oh, we've been waiting to talk to her about some things and do some healing for a long time. So they come in just wanting to know about career, relationship, or whatever. But then Spirit starts to like really ask these questions and turn them into themselves. People experience like deep release of like emotions and all this. And like they weren't expecting it at all, but it was what they needed. And it was what Spirit was waiting for them just to be open to. And so, yeah, oftentimes with anything, readings or shamanic journeying or whatever, people go in sort of wanting one thing, and Spirit just is like, here's the direction we need to go.
Priorities. Hank, you were going to say something.
It may parallel a little bit with Casey's. So in shamanism, when we do a soul retrieval, there's a couple different ways to do it. The most effective is if you know what happened, where it happened, and who it happened with. And without going into the story, just energetically knowing which point in this moment, this timeline, do you need to go to retrieve the soul piece? But then the question to ask is, what is the original wound? Because whatever they experience, say someone walked out on them and they experienced abandonment and they have this soul loss from this divorce or whatever it is, that might be version 34 of the same wound. And so where was the original wound? And that's where it might not even be this lifetime, which is interesting. When you said you went into a past life, you were looking to deal with this, but what was the original wound? And I'm getting goosebumps as I say it. So like people might come for for thing A, but really it's, way over here. That was the beginning of this energy flow that's creating this experience in their life that keeps showing up.
Precisely. So in my case, I went to ancient Rome, and it was maybe the 3rd or 4th century, not BC, but what's the other one? 80?
80.
They changed it recently. It has different letters, and I'm on the old system still. Before the Common Era and after the Common Era, I think is a new way of saying it.
Oh, so they took Christ out of it, huh?
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean, what did they got against the dude? No, anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, I get the two intermixed now. So anyways, about the 3rd or 4th century, and that's where the original wound was. Now, in this life, I did have unnecessary guilt, a lot of times brought on by one of my parents, who shall remain nameless, brought here to teach me a lesson, I think. But really, that's one of the reasons why you have past life sessions, is to go back to where it started, fix it there, and then heal it forward.
Absolutely. And the Akashic Records, if someone has access to that, they can see, okay, and this is going on in my life. This is where it started in a different experience, that if I were to heal that, it's going to be instantaneous now, in a sense.
Right. Another reason to go to the Akasha is to, and this may be the main reason, figure out life plans and, why does this keep happening to me? To get some of the questions, the big questions in your life answered. Why am I here? What's my purpose? Why do I keep kind of running into these situations? So that you can see patterns over your life and maybe get questions answered that way.
Yeah, and you said the naughty why question, but that's okay. We will give you a pass on it.
The why?
Well, for me, like asking why is like a victim question. Like it loops, like if to ask why this is happening, energetically you tell the universe, give me another experience as to why this is happening. And it creates this victim cycle. So I always tell people, like, instead of asking why, ask what could I do differently? What could I heal that will shift this? Or a question like that is then not just asking for the information as to why and creating another cycle of experience, but rather what could I do to break the cycle?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a word nerd.
Well, that makes two of us, or maybe three with Casey, because hypnotherapy is all about words. I mean, those are your tools.
Oh, it's amazing. And, and not just words, but one thing I learned early on doing not hypnotherapy, hypnosis. I can say that. I can't say it was hypnotherapy. But doing hypnosis was the way in which the words are said is far more important. Also, like the tonality, the intonation, all of that. Because, if you, we really don't retain consciously, or I think even subconsciously, the majority of the actual words that were spoken, but you remember the tone and the energy behind what was said. Like, for example, if you think back just like one or two sentences ago, can either of you say word for word what I was just talking about?
Nope.
Right. But you remember the feel behind it. And it goes back to sort of where I remember learning about where language sort of originated from was there were no actual words. It was just the toning. And like, so a certain tone might have meant, like, okay, I'm hungry, like, oh, it's just that kind of rise, fall, like, or whatever. And then that became more and more and more complex into words, but our brains are more wired to listen to the tone and the way words are said like that, as opposed to the actual consonant syllables, all that. And that's what, like in hypnosis, we talk a certain way. We're not sitting there like, hey, now you're going to relax, and then you're going to go here and do this. So no, we talk in a very calm, grounded manner, guiding that person to that deeply relaxed state. And just that begins to sort of entrain the person and bring them in. We could be talking nonsense at a certain point because they're so relaxed. We could be saying whatever we want, and they're still going deeper into that relaxed state. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing to bring up. But no, I guess I know Hank is really big on the words, and I'm much bigger on the like the energy behind the words. So Hank always catches me saying things.
Right. Well, and one of the reasons I do that, especially on live streams, is though someone might use the energy of a word, right? Like they just use a label that could be misidentified by someone who doesn't pick up on the energy of what was meant behind the word. And so it's very, for me, it's important to tweak that when it comes up.
So, three things. One, I'm going to go back and listen to the tone of that tree now. Since I don't speak tree, I'm going to listen for the tone.
Oh.
If you guys can come with me. Two, Casey mentioned nonsense. And, sometimes you do use nonsense because you need to confuse the analytical brain at times and let it just think about something. So sometimes even nonsense works.
Oh, yeah.
It's planned nonsense.
Yeah.
And third, I know, Hank, you have some stage experience, and I do too. And Casey, you brought up how you say it. I learned doing plays that you can deliver the same line 3, 4, 5 different ways, and the effect on the audience would be different. Same words. And sometimes I would test it out. If you do 3 shows in a row, for example, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, just try delivering a line a different way and see if you get the laugh.
I know, and was speaking a little bit more about the importance of words, because I did want to touch and make sure I was clarifying that word choice is also very important on top of the tone. But there was an experiment done at a military base, and a psychologist came in and was working the line at the cafeteria at this military base, and he had some fruit that like most of the people there had never had before, like a guava or something that like most of the soldiers had never heard of. So he's at the end of the line, and the first day he asked, would you like a guava? And the majority of people said no and didn't take it. So then I don't know if it was a different base or whatever they tried the test with, the same base, just different day or whatever, however they did it. And then the second base, he asked it a different way. It was there was one in between this. I'm not remembering. But then at the end, the last day, he asked, would you like 1 guava or 2? And then half the people took 1, half the people took 2. So just depending on how you ask the question will really create a different effect and response. So yes, the word choice is important. But if you combine that, like really powerful word choice with being really mindful of how the tone is coming across and all of that, well, now you've got a really powerful combination for really creating some powerful change.
And I practice this daily with my kids, and it is a work in process, I'll tell you. Like how to say it, but that is how they in parenting books and stuff, they'll tell you, present something to a child. Do you want option A or option B? Don't just say what do you like to do. You got to give them a little bit more context to make them feel like they're having a choice, but they're still doing what you like, and there's guiding them with that. But yeah, good stuff.
When you start practicing hypnosis and hypnotherapy, you do become really conscious of word choice and how it's delivered. And then also it bleeds over into everyday living. And I'm going to give you an example of that. A friend of mine who does hypnosis has been having some ongoing medical issues for the last couple of years. And we both had a similar experience with our medical offices, which are healing centers, right? And she said to me, she noticed it first. She said, I went in there. It was like, what's your card or what's your card number? Give us your medical card and what's your name? And after about the 40th time from visits, she said, well, good morning. How are you? And then I noticed that at the office that I go, which is pretty busy, and it's part of a hospital system, so it's kind of like big business medical. It was the same thing when I went in. It was, did you bring your card? And what time? What's your name? And I really was taken aback. I don't think that's the way you greet your clients, I imagine, when they come to you. It starts the whole, do I really want to be here? Is this really going to help me?
Oh yeah.
Going on in my mind when I'm greeted that way.
No, when it comes to big business, though, one of the definition of efficiency in terms of what I view for the corporate is how can I get the most out of someone and put the least into them. And so you get them into this mechanic, like they got to get through as many people. And if they say good morning, then that means the next person is going to have to wait a little bit longer. And it's not the truth for all the places, but a lot of times call centers and things where there's a high volume, it's really about what's your average handle time and how can you get that lower and what can you cut out. And it's just the nature of big business, unfortunately.
So isn't that then the trade-off between effectiveness and efficiency at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like the way Param, one of my friends, Param, who eventually will be on the show with us, he was actually on a TED Talks and everything, an amazing speaker. He would say, would you ever say that to a child? How do I get the most out of this child and put the least into them? And it's like, what if you would do, what if you looked at every relationship, how you would nurture like a offspring or a child and look at it like, what can I bring into this creationship instead of how can I relate away and separate from it?
So what is one of your son's names?
We have Max and Oliver.
Max and Oliver. So did you ever go up to Max and say, hey, Max, in terms of inputs and outputs, this isn't a good relationship. I'm inputting far more than I'm getting out of this deal.
No, my children are exceptionally aware. Like they were a couple years ago, 3 years ago. I used to take them out to like Unity Hall here in Westlake, and they have like this huge labyrinth behind. And we would be going in with rattles and like having ceremony, like dancing through to the middle and all this stuff. And I was teaching them Quechua and all this stuff. And Max told me, he's like, Daddy, he's like, you can teach me all about this shaman stuff when I'm a little older. He's like, right now, let me be a kid. So he even had the awareness. He's like, I'm here to have kid time now. Stop doing this. It's like, you can teach me about this later, but not now.
Oh, scared of him.
Oh, and then Oliver, like his level of intuition, like you can't hide anything from the boy. I even had our Wii thing, which is a Nintendo system. Like Nintendo sent me an automatic generated code. So it's like a code this long with random letters, numbers, and stuff. And so they couldn't just go out and play. They would have to have like the password. And I hadn't had a chance to change it to what I would want it to be. And he's like, password? And he's just on the remote. And next thing you know, he's playing. I'm like, what? I'm like, boy, let's go buy some lottery tickets right now.
That is amazing. And yeah, no one told him he couldn't do that, right? So he has
exactly. And they didn't tell me he couldn't do it. I'm like, well, if we don't want you to watch something, maybe you can make a different choice here. But I caught myself recently, I was saying why a lot, because we've been at home with quarantine and the kids are home till like next fall. And so it's like a lot of more time with the kids than normal. And I would find like, why are you doing this? Why are they doing this? And I'm catching myself. I'm like, I tell people all the time, don't do that. And the energy started to shift. And I said, what could I be and do here that would create a different experience with you? And they just like, what? And like it really stops them because it's a different question entirely. And the question puts the brain into a different space where it's looking for a possibility. And then things start to change.
Most people, I've noticed, if you just ask those questions, people that have no like reference to it, they're like, "What are you talking about, man? What am I supposed to say to that?"
Well, just stick to what else is possible. You don't have to be like I'm probably a little bit more elaborate with the kids because they're used to it. But
yeah, but even that, I've asked that, like, what else is possible? People are like, maybe this. I don't know. What are you asking?
Like, it's an open question. But there was like people in Access that their flight was canceled or whatnot, and they're like, "Well, what else is possible?" Like they were saying, "Oh, I'm going to put you on a flight tomorrow." And like, "Oh no, I have a class tomorrow. What else is possible?" They just kept, "What else is possible?" And the next thing you know, well, I can get you on this flight. You actually get an hour early, and we are upgrading you to first class. So like, if you really are persistent with what else is possible and don't settle for.
And how does it get any better than this? From Joy of Business, Simone Melissa, I don't know if it was her she was telling the story about or her friend, but similar thing where she got to a hotel and there was like a mistake in the booking, so they didn't have a room for her. And she just asked, how does it get any better than this? And they're like, what do you mean? She's like, how does it get any better than this? And they're like, hold on, let me get my manager. And the manager comes in, they tell him about the situation. She just goes, how does it get any better than this? They're like, well, let me see. Like, well, we do have the like penthouse suite that's not taken up right now, and we could give it to you for the regular rate. But that's the only one we have. And she just goes, how does it get any better than this? And they go, well, we'll send up some champagne and some food for you. And she just kept asking. She had this amazing penthouse suite. Normally, she was just paying for like one of the cheapest rooms they had, and that was all she did was ask that question.
Now, and take those questions to like what Paul does when you go to the Akashic Records and you're seeing stuff for like your life and for healing. Like to be in the energy of that possibility when you're getting information and you're receiving healing, that could expand exponentially what you could get out of a session, I would assume too.
It does. I'm writing down. I steal from the very best, and I'm writing down one of these. If you find yourself quoted or paraphrased someday, know that I consider you one of the very best. So I've labeled those Jedi mind tricks.
Oh, so now you go Star Wars instead of shamans. You go shaman mind tricks. You go.
How does it get any better than this?
This isn't the possibility you're looking for.
If you think about it, though, the language that they use in those, and I have to bring back the movies, it's very positive and kind of steering them into a different direction.
Yeah, it's very metaphysical if you watch it with the metachlorians and how like life force energy works. There's I don't know if he was real educated around that type of thing, but there certainly was a common thread between Star Wars and metaphysics and that type of thing.
It comes right at it, out at you if you think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't see how it could be a coincidence.
Cool. And Paul, are you able to, I know like it's uncertain with times going forward, like how much in-person things are happening. I know we're reopening the center on the 12th, if you didn't know officially.
I didn't know.
Yep. The center will officially be reopened on the 12th. But if someone was interested in like experiencing the Akashic Record, like hypnotherapy that you do, is that something that can be done remotely, or is that something that's really like an office-only type of service?
It can be done remotely. I since I did the group for Melissa, I was stumbling on her name next door. That was all done via Zoom session.
Okay.
So I would love to have the camera on if person were agreeable with that, but it can be done by phone. So how to do that? Well, you would just go to the Holistic Health and Healing website and schedule a 15-minute conversation, or what do we call them? Not conversations, but consultation. It was a C word. And if you need to talk about it, I could help you, figure out if this is the thing for you right now. Or if you just are convinced that it is, then schedule yourself a time. It would be a longer session. There's the short session on there and the longer. I think we call them basic and advanced. It's an advanced. And that automatically will put you on my calendar. So it's really easy. If you want to talk about it, the consultation is the route to go first. Yep. And that's even scheduled.
And I put the website up on a banner for people. And it's also, no matter where you're watching this, except for the watch party that I started, it won't be there. I don't know if it's there. But in the description for the video, there is a link to get in touch with who our guest is. So you can just click that. It will take you right to there. Or you can manually, do the finger typing to type it in if you'd like. But Paul is, like, I've experienced Paul's meditation every week on this meditation and movement series at the center, and we've just been live streaming it, and it's been just the way that he brings people through with the meditation. He really, I believe that you're one of the experts when it comes to that, Paul. Like, you're one of the best. And you don't know this, Paul, or maybe you do, but I've studied with Dick Sutphin even. And so
you have?
I have studied with Dick Sutphin. I've had a couple workshops when I was going through my training at fellowships. I did every extracurricular thing I could do. And Casey, if you don't know who Dick Sutphin is, I call him, he's like the godfather of past life regression hypnotherapy.
Oh, wow.
Because he stumbled across it quite accidentally when he was regressing like couples, and they were having the same experience, like past life experience in different sessions without talking to each other. They had that. So he started looking at that very deeply, and it sprung into a whole business around it. But he's amazing. And I've been in the class with Dick, and I've been in the class with Paul, and I would say you're right up there. So don't give yourself some credit, really. You are internationally known. Own it.
All right. So Sutphen, for Casey's knowledge, also uses shamanic techniques in his hypnosis, if that's something you want to pursue.
Very cool.
I studied with Dick indirectly. He designed the first hypnotherapy training program that I took. It was delivered by someone else, but he created the class. And I've been aware of him for like 20 or 30 years. I'd love to take something. If you think he's advancing in age, do you think he'll ever come back to Lilydale?
That's a question for off air. But yeah, he's definitely advancing in age. He hasn't traveled for. Well, actually, I think he came back just the 2 years ago. Like he'd been gone for quite a while, and then he kind of came back, and then he's been gone again.
Yeah, 2018. I missed it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so, and Patty Conklin used to travel all the time, and they were a hoot because Dick would talk first, and then Patty would get up there, and Patty doesn't believe in any of this stuff. Like she doesn't believe in chakras because she sees the energy of the world like Neo would see the Matrix. She's like, I've never seen a chakra, so it doesn't exist in my world. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist for me. So he would go on, and then she would come on and be like, I don't believe any of that crap he just said, and then she would do her thing. But they really worked really well together as like this Yanitin pair, this yin and yang experience, and people really received it well because they were getting both perspectives.
Different models.
Yeah, definitely.
So I just wanted to mention a little bit about the meditation and motion class if we have time.
Oh, absolutely.
So that happens live Sunday mornings at 8:15 with Hank doing the technical work in the background. And I think it's the greatest deal that I've ever seen of this type of thing. If you want to take it live, you can. If you don't, you get a link for the class, and you can not only use it on Sundays, but you can use it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The link is good for 7 days. So I think we're charging $16 for the class. And if you were to use it every day, I mean, it comes down to like $2 or $3 a class. It's a meditation class with just enough yoga thrown in to prepare the body to be able to go into a very good meditative state. If I had to describe it in 2 sentences.
Yeah, you don't even put the Y word in because it is such a subtle movement. And the way that Paul explained it in the past is that the body, if you do these like little subtle movements that he walks you through first, it prepares the body to be more deeply relaxed. It gets rid of the tension that might be held, and it just allows for a much deeper experience. I'll put the link right to this will go to YouTube, and I think the Facebook, actually, it's only going to go to YouTube. So if you're watching on Facebook, click over to YouTube. You'll see the link in the comments. Or just go to Holistic Health and Healing and go under events, and you'll see it there, movement and meditation. And he even busted out his ukulele the last 2 weeks. So you might get a treat with Paul singing on the ukulele. So I hope I didn't do a spoiler. I hope I didn't.
And you played bowls, I think, for the second class was wonderful. The singing bowls in the background.
Yep.
I hope they'll come back.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll have a new microphone. So, well, I have a microphone. I think it's going to work really well. I just haven't tested it. Maybe one day when Casey can come up, because I think with some of the tech we're getting, we're going to end up using that option to not compress the audio, because we're going to want the straight audio coming in, and we'll definitely need to test that out so we don't have issues like, I don't know what was going on this morning, like the technology spirits were messing with us.
Lots of Puklei.
Yeah, and Puklei is a Quechua word meaning for play. Play from a child, like playing a game, or play like sacred play in a ceremony. It's all the same word. Puklei. Very lighthearted.
Also like to mention, too, we mentioned Lilydale at least 3 dozen times this morning. One more time. I'll be there. This will be my 8th year of teaching there, and I'll be doing a 3-hour class on a Sunday. I think it's the last Sunday in June, on self-hypnosis, and then an all-day class.
I think we were supposed to be there the same week. I'm teaching at Fellowships on the 27th, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. What time is your gig?
It was supposed to be 9 to 4, but they published it 8 to 5. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have to wake up a little early. So I'm gonna
Well,
be there.
mine is in the evening. I think like 7 to 10-ish, something like that.
Yeah, I'll head over. But yours is Sunday. I was planning on staying the weekend anyway. In fact, I told Casey he could come down and be my class helper if he's open to it.
Yes.
Now, that's assuming it will be in person. If they say that it's got to be online, then I might be streaming the class. Like much similar to how we're doing this. Even for Paul's class, I offered Paul like, hey, if you have to stream it, I think they're giving the option you can go and stream it from there, or you can do it remotely. But anyway, it may be all available virtually. So if you're interested, stay tuned to the Facebook page, and HHH will definitely announce that stuff as it comes up.
So you'll be at fellowships outside the gate?
Outside the gate. Yeah, they don't let me at the gate anymore, Paul.
On what day? On what day? Saturday or Sunday?
I'm going to be there Friday and Saturday. Friday night, I'm doing a Crystal Bowl concert. And then on Saturday, I'm doing a I don't even remember the name of the class, but it's going to be using sound to raise your vibration and to heal your life. Basically, it's going to a sound healing class.
Okay, and then there's Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, music changes vibratory rates really, really fast. I don't know if you know this, but I was really, really big in the drumming and teaching hand drumming in the 90s. And a very wise old woman named Dottie Aslan hired me to do this a number of times for a group that she had. And she said drumming raises your vibration faster than anything she knew. And I would include music in that as well in general. So if you want to change your vibration quickly, maybe only temporarily, that doesn't mean you'll sustain it for the rest of your life, but it puts you into a nice, different, altered state really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the more things you can do to shift yourself into like these different theta states, whether it's using a rattle, drums, music, binaural beats, meditation, the easier it is for you just to naturally go there and be in that state. So you just whatever different ways you can do it however you can do it, so that when you need to be there, you can just go there. Your brain knows how to go, and that's one of the benefits of consistent practices. Like I did a consistent meditation practice like multiple times a day for over 2 years, where I was doing transcendental meditation. So like if you have a practice and you can commit to it and you can train your brain to go there, then you won't need the practice to go there anymore.
Right.
Do we have time for another story? I can tell you a drumming story if you want.
Yeah, we got time. Yeah.
Do we?
I mean, when I was in it in the 90s, I was kind of...
Maybe we don't. Actually, do you have somewhere do you have to be, Casey?
I have a reading, but I'm good for one more story.
I mean, I was totally immersed in this drum culture for a while. And I came down with a really bad case of allergies in the summer. Might have been in August when things are really dry. Sneezing, well, everything. Went to a large drum gathering. It happened about 4 hours. When I was in there, everything stopped. I was playing continuously, but there was no seasoning, there was no eye watering, there was no nose blowing. 15 minutes down the road, when I was leaving to go home, it started again. Somehow being in that altered state changed me physiologically. I don't know how.
Well, there's something to be said. There's a concept from Patty Conklin, that every tension and trauma and all the stuff is held in cellular memory. And she has a whole technique called color works, where it's like, what color does my body need to shift this from this to this? And when you are exposed to sound therapy, especially like multitude of variations and drumming and stuff, it starts to loosen up the sludge. And when that stuff starts to move, and you can move it out of the system, the physical stuff out of the system, because you're having the energetic healing, but you're getting a physiological benefit too, because all this stuff that's stored in the cellular memory, it gets released, and you purge it one way or the other, whether you're snotting it out or something else.
I noticed that a lot with doing like shamanic healing or even just massage therapy. There were times when whatever it was, like allergies, or like had like a little bit of a cough or something, and I'm worried like, oh, what am I going to be able to get through the massage? I can't be sneezing on people. And then I go in, as soon as I start to do the healing work, it's like, no, I'm good the whole time, feeling great. And then, a few minutes afterwards, I finish, it's like sneezing again or whatever. So same thing when I'm doing healing work. I noticed that.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you so much for being on with us, Paul. This was a lot of fun.
It was. Thanks.
Yeah, we got to hook up afterwards.
Just throw me an invite.
It sounds good. And we'll definitely connect, and we want to go find that tree.
Yes.
Field trip.
Yeah, if you're still with us, or you came in partially through, please go back, watch the full thing. We had tech issues at the beginning, but it led to some really great stories and conversation. And while you're watching it, please host a watch party, or if you're over on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, turn the notifications on, and give a thumbs up for the video. It definitely helps us out. All right, guys.
So
thank you,
everyone. Thank you.
Everybody.